Monday. It is Monday, May 13th. So we are going to be doing a little bit of a daily dose live. We're going to start to try these guys out. There's so many things that we are continually learning throughout our lives. There's ways in which we're interacting and growing as coaches, as humans, as partners, just all of these different insights. And this idea of kind of coming on and popping on live and just kind of talking a little bit more casually was something that Lisa and I have been discussing for a while. And then last night, I had the pleasure of having a girlfriend over for dinner who's also one of our current clients in our group program. We were talking about this concept that ideas are not yours. They are to be shared. And in that way that they're to be shared, if we get an idea, if we get like a spark of insight and we don't share it, then that idea is going to go to someone else to be birthed somewhere else. So essentially, we think about it in the terms of like a collective consciousness. And if there are ways in which songs want to come through, for example, like if they're coming through for an artist, if we don't actually bring them through, but we hear the song, like the song or the idea of this song or the idea of this art piece or the idea of creating something or having a discussion or telling someone something, if we don't actually act on it, it will come through someone else because it needs to be born somewhere. It's energy that needs to move through. So in that way, I have the opportunity of having so many different experiences and I get insights, and this is where we're essentially going to share them. So we'll try it out. I might have people on sometimes, might not. We're going to find out. But so what's happening? Like what's actually present this week? There's been quite a lot. So my partner, Rafa, has got his ultrasound this morning. He has a partial, or he has a full Achilles tendon tear, but it's not very big. So that's great news. And so far, because of our study and some of my background, which was definitely not specific to Achilles tendon ruptures, but with strength training and just knowing about the body, like the anatomy and how muscle is built and how tendons are not the same as muscle. So when we rupture a tendon, tendons are avascular, so they don't get as much blood flow, which means that to repair takes much longer than it would if we tore a muscle, for example. So in this case, we have to just kind of look at that and take a little bit more time. So what's occurring with that is he just got an ultrasound this morning. We're going to opt for the non-surgical route because he's already 2 weeks into recovery and because we fully have everything that we need to bring it back together naturally. And with the ultrasound, it showed that it's already growing back. Fantastic news. So the things that we're going to use for this, we're going to supplement with things like collagen, further amino acids, omega-3s, to really help to just give the body what it needs to build and repair. So that's occurring. That has a whole host of different experiences and lessons. And I'm sure that Rafa is going to continue to share more about his experiences and lessons because there are many and they're great. For myself, it's given me an opportunity to just step into the role of maybe getting things done, where in the past I will kind of be waiting, like who's going to do what. And now I just know I'm going to be doing a lot of these things that he's not able to do right now physically. And to be honest, it kind of like allows me to just like do it, which has been kind of nice because I don't have to guess, which requires energy. So that has been going on. And then we just got back from Sedona. So I've already kind of shared about this a little bit, but Sedona is a beautiful, beautiful place. If you guys haven't been, I highly recommend it. Just the setting alone is worth the trip. The energy of the land feels quite special. And yeah. And so now, coming from that trip, and if you did listen to anything on Instagram, I kind of shared about this experience that we had with a practitioner But what that allowed me to understand is it was a really great learning experience to notice that there's a certain protocol that we can go through if we are a coach or a facilitator that's looking to hold space. And we've also been having this experience with doctors around the surgery. And so here's like the broad picture of what we're getting right now in this space. The lesson that we're getting is that if you don't ask for what you want, if you feel that something isn't quite right and you don't ask for what you want or what you feel like you need, it's very oftentimes that you will not get it. And what I mean by that is an ultrasound or an MRI, for example. So Rafa went to two different physicians and they didn't give him an ultrasound or MRI, which realistically should have been one of the first things. So that's just one example. In some of the experiences that we had in Sedona with practitioners, they didn't ask for permission to have individuals filmed, or they didn't even have waivers to sign ahead of time before going into like a physical kind of experience. And that is something where when you're first getting into something and you're first starting it and you don't know what to expect, you may not even consider that that would be a thing. But just notice, like this is what I'm doing, is I'm just noticing when something doesn't feel congruent in my body. When I'm kind of going into a scenario and there's just something that doesn't quite sit right. And I think it's very common for us to second guess whatever that thing is. That feeling, like, oh, maybe it's just like my imagination or whatever it might be. But the lesson here was to really deeply trust when something doesn't quite sit right. Whether that's about a place or a person or a situation, if something doesn't quite sit right, there's probably a good reason for it. And I think for some of us who have people-pleasing tendencies, or we've had boundary issues or experiences, which is definitely me, that sometimes we can kind of go like, oh, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just something about me and that's what's happening here. Maybe it doesn't actually have to do with the experience or the person. So we'll second guess ourselves, especially if we're looking to please someone else. Like maybe someone else wants to do something and we're getting that feeling and we're there and we're all of a sudden like, oh, but I actually don't want to be here. But I wasn't listening to that feeling that was coming up for me because I wanted to do what I thought was right for the other person. So in that case, it also comes back to asking. So asking, hey, I'm having this feeling. I'm not sure if I want to be involved in this. What do you think? Like, how do you feel? And then actually bringing it up for a conversation. So I think that was a really beautiful, beautiful lesson. Another thing that we experienced throughout the course of the week was noticing, and this is a really big one, and we talk about this in our programs. We talk about this experience that occurs when we get triggered. We all have different triggers, and oftentimes, at least when in my younger years, I didn't actually understand that a trigger, to me, what a trigger is, a trigger is an emotional response to a belief that is occurring in the brain. And that trigger, that emotional response, is actually based on something that we've experienced in the past that's still sitting with us energetically in some way. So we are actually getting triggered by something that occurred in our childhood, some time previously. We're still storing that emotion and that emotional recall in our body. And then when we get triggered, it triggers that to come back up. So over the last week, we had this experience to take one scenario that was kind of involving all parties that were present, and then noticing how different aspects of it would trigger individuals in different ways. And when we are conscious and aware that we get triggered by something or something is our trigger, we can then find separation from it and kind of dismantle it. And we can kind of go, okay, so that triggers me because, and this is one of my triggers that I'm very aware of right now. If I feel like anyone that I love and care for is being treated in a way that is not kind. My protective instinct likely comes up, and I want to protect them. And me wanting to protect them basically looks like me going to the person who is doing that thing and making sure that they know that what they're doing isn't okay, whether it's my role to do that or not. So as you can imagine, it's gotten me into some interesting situations at times. But that protective nature is a trigger for me. And that stems from me having experiences when I was younger where I was not protected by the individuals that, we imagine should have been protecting me. So I know that that is my trigger. So when there are certain elements that arise in my life where that is coming up to basically show this emotional response in my body, I can go, oh, there my trigger is, and then I can start to dismantle it. Do I need to show up for this individual? Do I want to show up for this individual? Do I want to enact the natural response that that trigger asks of me that I've essentially had in the past? So that is something that we all had the opportunity to kind of witness. And we were able to witness it in a way where we were able to witness my trigger and 3 other people's triggers. And they were all different to the same situation. And we could all kind of like link them back to where they started, which is a really awesome thing, you guys. Like this is true awareness in my experience. So that was fantastic. And this is something that we can really kind of use as a tool everywhere in our life when we get an emotional response. And also notice where it happens in our body, whether it's in our heart, our solar plexus, our throat. Generally, where we get these emotional responses can sometimes indicate stored energy in different areas. And that can be an access point for us to dive a little bit deeper and understand where they might come from. The last little learning that I'll share about this past week was that we did a really incredible breathwork session. The breathwork session was awesome. It was to some incredible music. It was looking to sequentially kind of activate our chakras. And all that was really, really wonderful. And it was wonderful for me because I've done what I would consider a decent amount of work and education, specifically around chakra, around breath, around energy, around moving energy, around clearing energy from my body. However, what I also have learned through some of my experiences and through the practice with others is that if we do something that is as powerful as breath work and our body isn't primed for it, it can actually cause us to release things that we may not be ready or positioned to handle if we haven't had the proper tools for integration. And this is where I feel that with something as powerful as long duration breath work, where you're activating the energy centers, you're activating the chakras, you are priming the body to release something. I feel that, this is my opinion, I feel that there is an incredible responsibility for individuals in this space, and I didn't really think about this prior until having the experience, to have an integrative landing pad to help individuals understand what's happening in their body, to help individuals understand what might occur with emotions coming up, energy coming up in their body, whether it's, bouts of anger or frustration or sadness or ecstasy, whatever it might be, to kind of help them understand why that might be occurring. Because if they don't, it's really easy to kind of have those experiences, have them kind of interact people in or affect people in our greater environment and not really have the understanding or the knowledge to go, hey, this might be occurring because I did this practice for myself. And therefore, because I did this practice for myself, I might be experiencing emotional responses that aren't typical to my general day-to-day experience. So if we're not able to understand that, we may not know how our emotions and state of being will impact others in our surroundings as well. Whenever we're going through any sort of personal development process, I find that it's sometimes very helpful to let people in our surrounding know, like, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing. And this thing means that I'm going to be choosing this differently, or I might be experiencing this, or this might be when I need more time for myself, etc. I find that when we're actually able to share that with people in our lives, that it really, really supports them in having this deeper understanding of, oh, okay, I get it. You're doing this thing that's great, and I can support you because I know essentially what's going on. Okay, you guys. So that is the daily dose of some learning for the start of this week. And again, this is just kind of, we're testing it out, seeing how you like it. Please let us know if you do enjoy this kind of thing. If you do, then give us a like or a heart or whatever you're looking at this from. And if you would like to even have some of these discussions live and you want to come live with me, do the whole comment thing or send us a DM or whatever that looks like. So I hope everyone is having a beautiful morning. Thank you for tuning in, for those of you who did either now or in the future. And we'll see you next time.